51%. So
Welcome to the Jackson Postcast Behind the Paywall on a Thursday. Any night but Sunday. This is what we're doing now. Any night but Sunday. We missed last week because Labor Day. Brandon was in mourning after the Alabama game. Is that true, or is that just a rumor that's out there?
I was over it by that point.
Okay. Well, that and the hair mishap at the house.
I was going to say, fortunately, I had the distraction right when I cut the game off of one of my smaller kids did her first job of being a stylist on 4 other kids, and our little 2-year-old, who we have never cut his hair. We didn't take him home from the hospital. We've had him since he was like 6 weeks old. He's African American. He's black, so he had a nice little afro. And she lopped off the front of that, like up to like right here. So
he had like a LeBron James hairline going, like it was all the way back, or
yes, that is who it was. That's who I was comparing it to. Yes,
just get him a headband and cover it up, and he's good to go.
We are our witnesses.
Take his talents to preschool.
Yeah,
wherever he goes during the day. So, but on a serious note, how concerned are you about your Crimson Tide this year?
I was concerned already.
Okay,
I was not shocked at all by that. I mean, I thought Ty Simpson of the West Tennessee representation, I thought he did okay, but you can even go and look at my post from something right before the game started, where Tosh Newman, who used to be the guy in charge of mainly the Carl Perkins Civic Center, but some other things, he's, I think, selling insurance in Crockett County now. He commented, because he's a Florida State fan, something about, oh, don't, go easy on my Noles or something like that. And I was like, dude, I do not trust this team. I don't trust this coach. It's just a whole different mentality. And and pretty much they proved me right, because apparently we had players going through pregame warmups with their phone in their hand.
Oh,
so yeah.
Ooh. These are not your Nick Saban's Crimson Tide.
We had kids apparently getting DoorDash at 1:00 on Saturday morning in the hotel in Tallahassee.
No.
Before playing 13 and a half hours later.
And I will say this, I think Florida State is maybe better than people thought they were going to be. I think, and this is just me listening to Colin Cowherd. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's so hard to tell with college football with NIL now. You just don't know what you're going to have until probably after week 2 or 3, really.
Right.
Maybe 4 or 5. So Tennessee looked good though.
Yeah.
Nico who? Because he looked not so great. I even stayed up to watch some of that just to see. And I was in Eastern time. So that game started at 11:00 that Saturday night. So I watched a little bit of it. Yeah, I know. And
Tennessee definitely got the better of that trade so far.
Yeah. I was never a Nico fan. I didn't like Nico last year, and everybody loved him. I was like, I didn't see what the fuss was about. Obviously, raw talent, like he's just not. I wasn't sold.
Hey, and that UCLA fans are probably feeling the same way right now as Texas fans. Like, we thought this quarterback was supposed to be a whole lot better than this. So.
Yeah, I think Arch is going to be okay. Ohio State's good, man. And Matt Patricia, like, he game planned for Aaron Rodgers in his prime, like, and Peyton Manning, like, he knows what he's doing. So I feel like Arch will be okay. He just may not go number 1 in the draft. He may not go in the draft at all after his junior year. He may need to play 2 full years at Texas.
Probably.
Well, all right, let's get to it. While your phone is still alive and working. All right, you had a big day today in Lake County. I feel like every time we start one of these episodes out since end of July, we're starting with this story. And today was
I think this is my last trip to Lake County for a couple of months.
Right.
But yeah.
So today was the preliminary hearing for the Austin Drummond. And this is sort of what we've not teased, but we've been leading up to this. And we knew today we would get a lot more information that would come out. So we'll just start there. And before we start there, you wrote a 2,200 word column or story immediately after this. And it goes into incredible detail about the timeline of everything that happened from July, was it 28th?
Yeah.
Okay.
The night before. Yeah.
The night before until the arrest, essentially? Or did it just cover that
Not
first?
even to the arrest.
Not even to the arrest.
About 24 hours later, when the murders are called in, 911 is called, and the initial investigation is done. This just covers 24 hours.
Wow. We are not going to get into that, but I will say this. Get your whatever it is, $3 subscription for a week or whatever it is to access this, because it breaks down almost like hour by hour, those 24 hours after the murders occurred. And it's very enlightening. morbidly fascinating. And if you've been keeping up with this, it's sort of the details that everybody's been sort of guessing about, essentially. And now it's laid out here by the TBI, FBI, and the witnesses that were called up. So I'll ask you this.
And
Oh, go ahead.
well, I'll go ahead and say, I mean, you kind of already said we're not going to. I don't want to give no one a reason to click on the story, so we're not going to get too much in the details. But probably we'll give it a few days, maybe Sunday night when we normally try to record, or maybe early next week, and we may do one where we just kind of talk about the story. And there's even questions I've even thought of since writing in the 4 hours since I got through writing it. That's like, and I'm sure didn't make it into today's case because both sides said going into this, a lot of stuff's going to be revealed, but not everything. It's going to be just pretty much a preliminary hearing, is simply going before the judge saying, this is why we feel like this needs to be tried, and it's up to the judge to decide if he's going to try it. Spoiler alert, he said it needs to be tried. And so in November, it'll go to the grand jury in Lake County and then go to circuit court a week after that.
Could you imagine the judge was like, nah, let's just kick this. Right, we're not going to do it.
You
No,
did do
thankfully,
Goodman.
thankfully that did not happen. So what were some of the major revelations that came out today? Without diving too deep in the timeline, what were some of the main things that came out today that we didn't know?
So last week, we got a little insight into, during the hearing having to do with the attempted murder charge that was already in circuit court. The TBI agent who testified in that said something about the murders happening in the morning, which technically could have been as late as 11:59 a.m. on that day, but that's still at least 8 hours before the bodies are discovered, or at least before the Lake County sheriffs let the public know about it, or TBI let the public know about it. Turns out it was more like over half a day before. It happened earlier in the morning. We knew they were shot, but one tidbit of information, or one piece of information, tidbit sounds a little too light to discuss that. I apologize if it sounds disrespectful, but another piece of information that created definitely the most tense moment of the hearing, which lasted about 2 hours, was when I think it was the TBI agent in charge of the investigation. He was going over each victim and just what it appeared during the initial investigation, how it looked like they died. They all died from gunshots to the head. One of the victims, I think, Adriana, forgive me if I'm wrong, he said you couldn't really tell how many gunshots. It was gun to the head. But then he said Matthew Wilson was shot 11 times. And as soon as he said that, his mother was there in the courtroom and reacted the way you would expect a mother to react. The judge had told everybody before, you're probably about to hear some stuff that is going to be very unsettling. If you need to get up and leave, please do so. And then when you collect yourself, you can come back in. And as soon as he said 11 times, she said, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And just the sound of her crying out in the hallway, it was a very emotional moment that the judge just kind of said, let's give it a minute, give it a few seconds. And then he told Attorney General Goodman to get back to making the case and questioning the witness.
I have two questions about that. One, about the parents. Did you notice them even acknowledge Austin Drummond, look in his direction, or was it just completely like they just separated themselves as much as they could?
I looked over there. I didn't look over when he first entered because I was watching him come into the courtroom and walk through. So I was kind of watching his demeanor. But as they were escorting him out, the judge said, everybody keep your seat. We're about to escort Drummond out and get him back to the jailhouse, which is right behind the courthouse. Well, the Lake County jailhouse is. He's staying in Obama, but of course they keep him in Lake County before they bring him to the courthouse. So while they're carrying him out, I did kind of glance over. Where the media were sitting was in the jury box, and I was in the very back corner of the room, If you're watching the live feed from the REG in Memphis, I think, if he had panned out to the full left, I would have been in the very back, in the back corner on the left side in the jury box. And so I kind of watched the family as he was walking by them. And one particular family member that I was watching mouthed something in his direction. I don't think it was to him. I think he was just kind of saying something under his breath to maybe whoever was sitting next to him. But I mean, they kept it civil. They did a whole lot better job than I probably would have done.
You're not kidding. You and me both.
And by the way, when I say that, I'm not saying Mr. Drummond did it. I'm just saying they did a lot better job than I would have done if the guy that I'm being told is the one who did this was walking by.
Um, what was Drummond's countenance like in there today? Was he pretty stoic again, or was it just sort of the same as what it was a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, he's just kind of sitting there. He did a good, I mean, I guess stoic would be a good word. He's not talking, he's not reacting. Because
Okay.
where I could sit, I didn't have to shift my eyes very far from the person on the stand to seeing him. And where he was sitting at the defendant's table, usually when you're watching a courtroom drama on TV, you got 2 to 4 seats where they're sitting facing the judge. Well, they just had 2 seats facing the judge, and those 2 were with lawyers, and he's sitting on the end of the table facing like toward us in the jury box. So it wasn't that much effort for me to kind of cut my eyes over when something was said that he might react to. And today he showed that if you ever play poker against him, you better bring your A game.
And I don't want to make this like super graphic, but I am curious.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Whoever the witness was said that Matthew Wilson had been shot 11 times. Did they specify, like, did he get shot 11 times in the head, or this was
No.
like 11 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He said there were 11 gunshot wounds.
Another question. Did they say was it the front of the head or was it in the back, like an execution?
Couple of them, and it may have been Adriana. One of them was specified that it was in the back. The other 2 were just said in the head.
Okay.
So maybe he said in the back of the head for the first one, and then maybe he just kind of assumed if I say back of the head for the first one and I say 2 more in the head, you're just going to assume all 3 in the back of the head. The questioning didn't call for that
Specificity. All right. So without getting into the timeline, so we have, obviously, I think that's sort of what not what I was waiting on, but I think I was curious to where this happened. And did they say where? Like, are they assuming that it happened there, like where the bodies were
Carrington
discovered?
Road.
That's where it took place. So did they say how they got them out there, or was that mentioned at all? Okay, they was just specifically talking about the event itself and not much of the lead up to it.
And they may not know what got them out there. Pretty much all they said was, and they showed video of all 3 of the victims' vehicles getting to the spot, and then only one of the victims' vehicles leaving the spot. And then early afternoon, the other 2 vehicles are still there because they're observed by a Reelfoot Lake State Park ranger, and he actually drove by to check on it. There was a 3rd vehicle there, which wound up being the vehicle that was rented by Michelle Ovelis, the woman who was charged yesterday or Wednesday, September 3rd, by TBI. She got the vehicle for him. He does the killings earlier in the day. Allegedly, on Carrington Road, disposes of Matthew Wilson's truck in Dyersburg, gets a ride from Tanaka Brown, and gets help disposing of the truck from Tanaka, allegedly.
Into the gully in Bikini Bottom, right?
Right. And then goes to Jackson and gets the rental car and then goes back. And this whole time, we haven't even addressed the baby that was left in the front yard. The whole time the baby's with him in the car seat, and where the baby was when it happened, if the baby was ever in danger, or if, as weird as this sounds, he had mercy on the baby to take her with him instead of leaving her in a vehicle. Because remember, that was one of the hottest weeks of the summer. So, it wouldn't have taken long for lack of a better term, for a 5th murder charge here.
Is there any talk about a motive at all today?
Not today.
Okay. Not today. That will come. I assume that will come later when more of these details come up.
Goodman indicated, I can't remember if it was last week after the attempted murder or if it was on August 14th after the second hearing, but the way he talked, it was like, well, yeah, we've got a motive. So, but apparently there is one, but that was not discussed today.
And I don't know, like I said, we're not getting much into the timeline, but there were some events that happened in the timeline that sort of made me raise my eyebrows. Were there any events within that timeline that you were kind of like, whoa, okay, I didn't see that coming, or I have more questions about that specific event in particular?
I mean, I didn't really have any expectations going in. And when you don't have expectations, because I don't have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff, so I wasn't expecting anything that would have caused me to have questions. So, I mean, I do wonder, apparently he went to his parents' house for about an hour and a half that evening. Did he eat dinner? Did they ask how was your day? I mean, like, I'm just wondering what that interaction was like.
I saw that too, and that that crossed my mind as well. It also said Midtown. Did they say a street? Like, I'm
Who
pretty
said
sure.
Midtown?
I think in your piece, Midtown Jackson.
I never said Midtown. If I did, I didn't mean to.
Okay, I need. And now again, I was keeping score at a volleyball game when I was scanning that article, so I may have
Yeah.
just okay. But I was like, I have neighbors, but no.
I also had where I was writing. I also had somebody talking to me, but
Gotcha.
I don't remember even the term Midtown even popping into my mind during the hour it took me to write that story.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, good. Well, that whew. The one detail from the timeline that I sort of like, and we like I said, we won't dive into it. Was he did? It seems like he did go to his girlfriend's apartment at one point during this whole thing. Twice, and got cleaning supplies. I believe was what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So was there talk about why was she not an accomplice as well, or do we even know if she was at the apartment?
The only time she was mentioned is at the end, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute. So it just mentioned he went to her apartment. Actually, he may have only gone once at the end of the day. I mean, she lives at Cherry Grove Apartments, or she lived. I don't know if she's still there. Cherry Grove's Apartments, which is the ones by Union. And on August 6th, the day before he got apprehended, there were a couple of instances where people were searching empty apartments there that day. So, but apparently Michelle Ovelis also lived there, and that's where he went. Come back to Jackson, he got his vehicle, which was the Audi that was found on August 1st, and then left his Audi at Cherry Grove, got the rental car, drove back, and to try to do cleanup and try to cover up this thing. And it just so happened that is when the park ranger drove by and possibly busted up the effort to cover up this whole thing. Or else we may be talking about 4 missing people from Dyer County, and it would have been,
we'd had no idea,
months before we found them.
Is that the ranger I noticed in the article? Now we are getting deep into it, but he said he passed a vehicle, and I forgot what it was, a Rogue, maybe. I forgot what the vehicle was. And when he came back, it was gone, but there was like this cloud of dust, like as in, which led him to believe that whoever was driving that was driving it very fast. Mm-hmm. And by the time he got to the end, it was out of sight, right? So like they were hauling. Yeah. So yeah, it does sound like he may have run up on that. It's sort of in the middle of it.
And the spot where on Carrington Road where these cars were, it's maybe a mile from the prison up there. And I've been to the prison a couple years ago because when I was still at the Sun, when Lane College was doing a educational type thing, and where inmates could get their college degrees. And so I went and covered the first graduation ceremony from that. And I've been up there a couple of times during all of this and just driving around up there. And I can tell you, roads in Lake County, once you get away from Tiptonville, it's kind of like what I picture out west, where it's a lot of just straight shot roads, flat ground. And it's like these roads they were paved and marked off simply because they were borders between large farm land areas. So you see nothing but fields all around you until you get to the tree line by the river. And there's the occasional house or a couple of churches just kind of randomly out in the middle of this field. But you can pretty much see, for the most part, a half a mile around you when you're on one of these roads, unless you're on Carrington Road driving into the woods where this happened. And so, yeah, he gets to the end of that road and he's looking around. He's like, this car was back here like 2 minutes ago. Where'd it go? And so, yeah, that told him, okay, yeah, they hightailed it out of here, but he didn't know that anything else had happened until about 7 hours later.
So we mentioned the girlfriend, and you said she didn't really get brought up till the end, and that was about the restraining order. So talk a little bit about that. Would somebody request that restraining order to be removed, and why did they do that, and what did the judge say?
Yeah, well, it was actually said during the court today because Brian Huffman, the defense attorney, he wanted to clarify something that had been misreported by multiple outlets, including myself, because I thought I heard it when it happened, but then everybody else was like, no, that's not what he would have said. So I went with everybody else instead of my own ears. Note to self, always trust yourself more than everybody else. No, he said that his girlfriend, who was named today, Caitlin Speed, And it was also mentioned today she's pregnant with Austin Drummond's child. She had asked for the restraining order against Drummond to have no contact with any family members of the victims. She asked that to be altered so that she could have contact with him because she is carrying his child and she wants to be able to communicate with him about how the pregnancy's going or whatever, or, family matters. And, but because, go ahead.
Clarify, and her sister was one of the victims, correct?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
She is the sister of one of the victims. I don't know if it was her sister. She is the sister of at least one of the victims. I've heard different stories when I go down rabbit holes on social media in the comments. Either she's a sister of both Braden and Adriana, and she's Courtney's daughter, or she's just one of their sisters and not Courtney's daughter.
Gotcha.
Either
She's
way,
related somehow.
yes. So she just wanted to be able to communicate with the father of her child. And both Goodman and Huffman made good arguments for their side. Goodman said that it's very possible she's going to be a witness in this case later in this trial, so she don't need to be talking to the defendant. Huffman said, okay, well then let's just let them talk. They just can't talk about the case. And Goodman earlier had brought up on a couple of instances the interview that Drummond had done with Nick Barris from News Channel 5 in Nashville. And he said, Your Honor, they made it obvious that they're listening to his phone calls or recording them. So if they find out that he violated it, they'll know it. But Judge Cook, the General Sessions Judge there in Lake County, he landed on, we're going to keep that restraining order up, but there's not supposed to be third party communication between Drummond and the family either. But he did allow Drummond's own family can communicate between him and Caitlin. So hopefully his parents will be in communication with Caitlin, finding out how their unborn grandchild is doing.
That's a lot, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts to this. And so, again, I'll just say, and I've got the article pulled up right here, and I'm just sort of scrolling through it, and you did a really, really nice, detailed job of laying out the timeline starting from Monday night, July 28th, and going all the way through the next 24 hours. We may talk about this in a few days and go deep into it just with its own standalone episode. But if you're watching this or you're listening to this, I think it's worth your time to go pay the whatever it is and just sort of track this, not hour by hour, but close. It's close to hour by hour. There's some 2-hour gaps in there just because of the way the phone triangulation goes.
I was going to say, in some cases, there's like 7 different things that happens in a half hour. So,
right. There's a lot. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of locations mentioned, like 3 different counties in this, maybe more?
And there's got to be a 4th county in there because if there's traveling in between, you can't get from Madison to Dyer Lake without going through at least Crockett.
Gibson.
If not Crockett and Gibson.
Right.
Depending on where you're starting from.
Yeah.
So...
anything else you want to add to this before we sort of jump into the local stuff? Or
no, I mean, like I said, I've got questions, based on what we know and based on what was not told today. And I'm not even going to try to attempt to answer them if we ever do discuss them in a few days. But I may want to kind of lay those questions out and just be like, it's almost like this is what I'm expecting to hear when the trial gets here, which I don't think it's going to be the trial on November 17th. It's just going to be the first hearing in circuit court, which I'm sure will kind of lay out the plan for the trial.
Okay, so that's sort of the next thing that happens, right?
The grand jury will convene on November 10th to discuss his case, and then assuming he's indicted, he'll be in circuit court on the 17th.
How did you, and this is the last question about this, then we'll move on. How did you feel being in there? Like, was it hard to hear some of these details, especially in the same room as the family members of the victims? Or you're a reporter, so you've kind of got to stay like emotionally neutral in a lot of situations.
So this was the second real time that I've sat in a trial, like a serious trial like this. The first one being when the youth minister in Jackson was accused of inappropriate relationship with a girl last year. And honestly, during that one, I felt more uncomfortable as it was happening because of what all was told. And if you go back and read that story, I don't really get into that a lot because I'll be honest with you, my wife read it before I published it, and she's like, hey, you wouldn't like it if this was put out there about our 17-year-old daughter. So I said, yeah, good point. So unless it's necessary to be in there, and I was, yeah, it's not necessary. So we took it out. So I guess because of that, it was almost like because we had to be in place at 12:30 before the media had to be in place at 12:30 before the hearing started at 1. So I'm sitting in that seat, and there's a little bit of conversation between all of us there in the media, because we had 30 minutes with nothing to do because we couldn't have our phones or our laptops either. But as it kept getting closer and closer, and other people were having conversations with each other, and I'm just kind of sitting in the corner by myself, alone with my thoughts, I started anticipating, for lack of a better words, more detail than what we got about the actual, I think y'all, I don't want any family members watching this or listening to this and thinking I'm getting irreverent with what they're going through. And I hate saying it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah, you were. I mean, I think we're all conditioned, especially with what we see in television, movies, whatever else.
Right.
When something like this happens and we have to fill the blanks in ourselves, it's going to be the most extreme version of what we
Worst
think
case
happened.
scenario.
So, worst case scenario. So, yeah, I don't think you're being insensitive. Just just being honest. Yeah. So again, this is the third time I'll say it. I think it's well worth, if you don't have a subscription already, it's well worth your $3 to pay for the 7-day or whatever for this. And hell, just go ahead and pay for the 6 months, because you'll be covering this for at least that long.
$40 will
off
get
and
you a
on.
year. So yeah.
There you go. Just splurge. Okay. Well, we can move on to some more local stuff that's a lot less dramatic, if that's okay with you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, some might say boring. So let's start with the school board electing new officers, but not really new, except for one position that nobody seemed to know existed until this last meeting I read. So first of all, chairman of the board, is that the right title? Harvey Walden, chairman of the board.
Chair, whatever. Yeah.
Board chair. He was reelected. Board chair. Was that unanimous, or was there like
all these votes were unanimous? There was only one.
Hey.
If it wasn't, I would have gotten into the detail of that, Gabe.
Okay, I didn't. I know things happen so quick in those situations, though, to where So I just didn't know.
Yeah, last year it wasn't unanimous, but I don't think it was unanimous. Because Pete Johnson had been the chair for like 5 years. Then with the elections that happened a month before, you had the big flipping of the boards. So Mr. Walden became the chair then. But to his credit, I mean, just from watching how these meetings happen, and not just the board meetings and the work sessions, but also the committee meetings, and seeing the conversations that happen among these members, all 9 of them. I mean, there's been contention on some issues, but it's been nowhere near as contentious as we thought it was going to be about 13 or 14 months ago, when we saw what was probably about to happen was going to happen with the elections. Because a lot of people are out there thinking, oh, if this board goes conservative and it's at least 5-4, if not 6-3, with We the People, the MCCR and MAGA and all this stuff taking over, they're going to have Marlon King run out of there by 6 o'clock at a 5:30 meeting. And none of that's happened. They've made votes and passed things that probably would not have passed a year earlier. And made decisions, even had conversations that they probably wouldn't have had a year earlier. But everything's been respectful. Everything has been professional, responsible, because unlike in certain years past, we've got adults up there right now that genuinely seem, while they may disagree on how to get there, they all genuinely seem they all want to land at doing what's best for all 13,000 students in Jackson, Madison County schools.
So were there any other positions that were voted on that have changed since last year, or did everybody just kind of fall right back into their same slot?
I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to remember who was vice chair last year, and I thought it was Pete Johnson, but maybe it was. But Madison Compton. Don't think Andrea Michelle Givens Moore was the legislative liaison. She might have been, but that doesn't seem like something they would have put on somebody who'd just gotten elected to the board a month earlier.
Yeah, that'd be a lot. I don't feel like she was either. I feel like it was somebody else, and I can't think of.
Now, Darnell, he's been the parliamentarian for 2 or 3 years now, which the main one on that is, the main thing you do on that is when there's public comments, he's the one over there holding the timer for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever Harvey decides that night it is.
He needs an air horn that's like right up next to the speaker.
Which the whole 2 or 3.
I have spoken at a couple of those in public comments, twice actually. One was at City Hall, and that big one in like 2018. And then another
first time
one
we met that night, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. The other one was when I think we were trying to find a superintendent after Eric resigned. And ironically, I like got up there and pushed for Jared Miracle, which was weird. Because I don't like didn't really jive that well, but I also just really liked the work that Eric was doing. And I was like, well, Jared's his right-hand man. So
Yeah.
let's continue this. But yeah, those things, those public comments, like you get 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it is. And the first time I felt very prepared. The second time I did, and I was like, oh, I got this. After 30 seconds of talking, I was like, I got nothing else to say, but I haven't wrapped it up. So that was not my best. That was not my best 2 or 3 minutes.
I
Those could be
remember, you
intense.
remember a couple of months ago when city council was going to vote on the property at the corner of Windy City and McClellan, and there was that big meeting of about 250 people at Fellowship Church, and Brad Greer kind of came up there and talked and discussed. One of the things he was discussing is, all right, if y'all really believe in this, then then be ready to speak at public comments. You can't just have everybody going out there to speak. Like, if somebody's going to make a point, we don't need 17 other people making that point. And one of the things he said was, you've got 3 minutes to talk. And for some of y'all, that 3 minutes is going to feel like an eternity. For others of y'all, that 3 minutes is going to feel like about 15 seconds. So you got to make sure that you can say everything you got to say in that time. And if you're done in 45 seconds, then you're done. That means somebody else gets to speak. So go for it.
Wrap it up. That's what I should have done. I just did not expect my ending to come that quickly. And it did. And I was ill prepared. So the officers essentially, like, there's a lot of officers. I was like, does everybody get like a little title? But I guess not. I mean, but it seemed like, man, we got like 7 people who have some sort of position.
5 out of 4. 5,
okay.
5 out of 9.
Yeah, over half. Over half. Everybody gets a trophy on the school board.
You get a position and you get a position.
If we have time, I'll wheel back around to the school conversation because I am a little bit worried about your battery, and I do want to get to city council stuff, which is sort of the next item on the agenda. City council had a
22
meeting.
now.
All right, we're going to roll then. City council had its last meeting, and there were 2 major things that were voted on. One is something that both of these things we've talked about. One was the rezoning of the area by the country club that Alex Holman, who I am also sort of tangentially related to by marriage. I didn't realize that's who that was when we talked about this a couple months ago. And then when I reread it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. They are trying to develop this property by the country club, and the country club doesn't seem to like any ideas that they're giving, correct? Or that's part of the discussion here?
Yeah, I mean, to hear Alex sell it, every time they come to them with a possible solution, the country club or the board or Todd Soroki, who is a representative of the country club in these legal discussions, always seems to have a problem with every solution. And like I said, that's to hear Alex sell it. So yeah.
I guess that was my main question. So the opposition is coming from the country club.
Mainly from the country club, but there's also a contingent from the neighborhood, the homes.
Who are probably members of the country club.
There's probably a good bit of overlap, yeah. But, I mean, the people who live there, I mean, if you're at the country club, you don't really care that much about the intersection. But if you live in that neighborhood, you do. And, I've talked to a couple of them, and they make legitimate concerns that, there I am at 20, about, the traffic flow. But there also is some concerns about, and this was spoken of more this time around than it was last month, about drainage issues. And apparently there's talk of a retention pond that's going to be dug possibly as large as an acre, and the whole tract of ground is only about 5 acres, like maybe 5.2 or something like that. So you're talking about 20% of the land is going to be used for retention potentially. So they're trying to get all that figured out.
Did they say what they landed on then? If this, like, obviously it passed, it was 6-3, right? Dodd, McMean, and Busby voted against it. The other 6 voted for it. So where did they say what they were going to build now that it was rezoned? Is it going to be, because I know they talked about a couple of different ideas a couple of months ago. Did they say what they were going to land on at this point?
It's not set in stone. I mean, Holman has said he wants part of it to be upper scale townhouse type situation with a small gated community there, whether it's rental or people are owning the townhomes. I think they were aiming toward owning, just because typically if you're owning instead of renting, then you're going to take better care of the area around you and the area within the building. And then the other side was going to be some kind of upper scale retail. And he made the pitch. He's like, "Look, we're the development team that brought in Jonathan's Grill. We're not trying to bring in." I mean, he didn't say this, but to kind of go along with a lot of the trends that people like to talk about in Jackson, we're not trying to bring in the 57th vape shop or the 57th coffee shop into Jackson. We're trying to bring something in. Not that the coffee shops aren't nice, but we're trying to bring something nice to Jackson and something that Jackson can enjoy and be proud of and actually go to and support. And I'm sure all 70,000 or 69,315 residents of Jackson have 69,315 different ideas of what that could mean. That's his aim with that area. But nothing is set in stone. All that was officially discussed Tuesday was actually zoning. Now, unofficially discussed, as Holman and Soroki were sitting up there, was what should go there, what could go there, and a lot of he said type stuff back and forth about how agreements they nearly came to ultimately fell through. But as far as the city council's business goes, all they cared about on Tuesday was, are we going to rezone this or not?
Gotcha. Okay. So that actually, you referenced vape shops. There was another item that was discussed in the article, and that was, and help me understand this a little bit. I know there was the issue with Kratom that we discussed on here 2 weeks ago when you were at the Republican caucus, and Juliet, I always mispronounce her name, Miss Stone, Joanne Stone, and someone from a spell brought this to the attention of the caucus. And then I believe it was Councilman Stovall did he do something to sort of kick this into gear on the city council's part? And so what did they, I'm just going to pass it to you because I'm getting hung up on my words. What is this resolution? What does it do? And what do they vote on?
All right. So I guess it was 3 weeks ago now. Lindsay Crowder with Aspel and Rachel Harden with Aspel, and then Jillian Stone with Scarlet Rope spoke to the caucus. And Mike Taylor asked them to come speak to the entire county commission. And they did, made a good case for Kratom, which is a natural plant, and its synthetic derivative, 7-OH, which is more addictive, it's just a worse drug, and it's not regulated by the FDA yet. And so they were just trying to get the word out and trying to see if there's anything the county commission can do about it. And pretty much all they can do is draw up a resolution to vote on and approve to send to the state legislature saying whatever y'all can do to severely regulate this, if not ban it, please do so. And County Attorney Jay Bush is drawing that up this month, and they're actually going to bring it back to the county commission, I guess this month, September, and discuss and vote on that and probably pass it and send it on to Nashville. JP Stovall, who is on the city council, he's also the co-host of our good buddy Chuck Walker on Chuck's show, Walker Talks. And Chuck had read my story, and they were discussing it on the show, and they got a bunch of calls about it. And shout out to Councilman Stovall, because he even credited my story and the calls into their show for opening his eyes to the issue. So he asked for Teresa Luna, who helps with some of the legal issues with the city. She's not the city attorney, and his name has just totally escaped me.
Lewis Cobb.
Yes, Lewis Cobb. She works with Mr. Cobb. So I guess they had her draft the resolution, because usually when they're talking policy and resolution, she's usually the one that has that discussion with the council during agenda reviews. So she drew up a resolution, and they discussed it. And there were some questions like, why do we need to approve this? Why do we need to vote on it? Blah, blah, blah. And one veteran spoke during public comments earlier in the meeting and said, hey, Kratom has actually helped me in my pain management, so please don't try to get it banned. And he made a compelling argument that a lot of people's like, okay, so maybe we don't need to go scorched earth on this stuff, but we definitely do need to severely regulate it. And Councilman Richard Donnell, he spoke up and asked Mr. Stovall, would you be okay with amending this and just saying the synthetic and not the actual plant? And that's where they landed and approved it. And I don't think it needs a second reading, so I guess it's going to go to Nashville.
That's good. And I think there is a very, because I saw some of those comments online too, and there are benefits. I think there are benefits to several different types of plants that
if they're used in moderation for the proper use. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I think that's where the common sense aspect comes in. Obviously, whatever people were harvesting from this synthetic version was incredibly damaging. Look, anytime I'm agreeing and liking Carl Snyder's comments on Facebook, like, something needs to be done, because like when you have two people that are as different as we are that are like, yeah, this is not a good thing, then it's probably not a
I
good thing.
one or two things is happening. I'm either listening for a trumpet because Jesus is coming back, or Humboldt is freezing over.
Maybe both. Maybe this is what we're waiting for. That part was left out of Revelation. Carl Snyder and Gabe Hart agree. And then the trumpet sounds, the seals are broken. No. But in all seriousness, I think this is a really good example of when something is clearly dangerous to the public, both sides of, whatever, the aisle, so to speak, even though there is no party affiliation on the city council, come to an agreement and make a logical conclusion or decision based on what they hear from their constituents, like this veteran and also like Julian Stone. So they're like, yes, it can help people. Obviously, it's very dangerous. Let's find some way to meet in the middle. So
Yeah.
that's good. Like, I think that's a good example of how things should work, right? When something is a danger to the public, let's regulate it. On that note, let's talk about Representative Chris Todd and what he wants to do. Because that is the next item on the agenda. And it would be a great segue if he was speaking maybe about guns the way that we were just talking about Kratom. But if we're going to make that analogy, he would just be like, let's put Kratom everywhere. Put it in vending machines in high schools, because kids should have access to Kratom. We're not talking about Kratom, we're talking about guns. And this ruling that happened in a Gibson County court, and I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on this, but essentially,
I don't understand the
that,
weeds, so yeah,
hey,
let's not get too deep into them.
All right. But essentially what it's saying is there are certain places where you're not allowed to have a gun, but that is infringing on the Second Amendment. So essentially, everybody has the right to bear arms. And this actually made it onto NPR, maybe the Memphis station, maybe not the national, but this ruling did. Essentially, it's very broad, and it almost seems to not assume, but indicate that, hey, kids should have the right to bear arms also. Like, it could be interpreted that way because of how broadly it's written, which when you think about it is crazy talk. But that's sort of the issue that some people are having with the way this is written. Now, that being said, Representative Todd sort of wants, I'm not sure what legislative body, to double down on this. I think it's maybe Skermetti or someone, to double down on this and make sure that like this is,
he's one of the appellate court
right
to
way.
double down on this. He wants the language cleared up. Yeah, he wants the appellate court to clean the language, and he just wants the law to be clear, but also not to be restrictive on the Second Amendment rights of Tennesseans / American citizens.
Yeah, and to be fair, leaving like personal feelings and opinions out of this, like Chris Todd has always been very consistent as a Second Amendment support, not even supporter. I mean, like it's beyond supporter. Like, he is a Second Amendment guy, and he is going to push legislation as far as he can to, I guess, uphold that Second Amendment, or to at least wring it out to its fullest extent. And so, did you talk to him or about this? Is that where you got those quotes, or was it more from?
Yeah, we talked for a little while.
Okay. And
he talks to me, Gabe.
People are going to be surprised when I say this. He's, it's funny because the few times we've had discussions, one was on Dan's show, and it got a little tense. But sometimes I talk to people and I feel like it's this, right? Like, everything he was saying, I know made complete sense to him, and it didn't to me. And everything I was saying made complete sense to me, and I know it didn't to him. But that's what that conversation was doing. And the arguments he was making sounded very logical to me if I believed them. I just didn't believe them, right? And so I think I don't know if you'd say the same thing about me, but so when he was talking about this, like, you probably very much understood his points that he was trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I try to have an open mind. I'll be honest with you. I don't have, the Second Amendment was written for a reason. I see the points from people like from people on the left who say, well, it was written in 1776. It wasn't talking about automatic weapons. We don't need automatic weapons to hunt deer and stuff like that. I get that. But I also get his side too, where and one thing at one point he likes to make during these discussions is, it's not just guaranteed in the Second Amendment. Self-defense is a God-given right, and we don't need the Constitution or our state annotated codes infringing on rights given to us by our creator. So that's why he's so consistent on this, is because he thinks this is about more than the Constitution. This is biblical, almost, essentially. And
Whoa.
well, I mean,
So that's one of those examples that he and I.
right, yeah. And well, if it's a God given right, you can make that argument that it's biblical. Or if you feel it's a God given right, you can make that argument. So
If only
I don't
Jesus
even
had a
remember
gun.
what your question was.
No, just that he was probably making a lot of sense. Like, and then you were talking about you can see both sides, and where his angle was, he believes it's something even bigger outside the Constitution. It is a quote unquote a divine right, a God given right to protect yourself. Since we live in 2025, I guess you can't protect yourself from an AR-15 with a rock. I guess his logic is you better have an AR-15 to protect yourself from another AR.
And there are arguments from both sides that suggest the validity or invalidity of the argument of the good guy with the gun, or in this case, as you put it, the good guy with the AR.
Yeah, I think it's one of these situations. I think it's very much like the Kratom situation, but we can easily talk about Kratom in a bipartisan sort of way. It's just not this because people don't, we don't have we're not sacrificing anything to the golden calf of Kratom. I think sometimes we do that with Second Amendment, but with the Kratom situation, both sides saw, hey man, we need some regulation on this. Maybe not scorched earth, like you said, but I think maybe if we could find a way to get there with the gun conversation, man, it could be productive. It's just, I don't think we can even get there, right? It's an all or nothing thing a lot of times with the conversation about the Second Amendment.
Yeah,
especially in Tennessee. I mean, some states do regulate things a little bit.
I remember a couple of years ago when some Democratic state legislators were doing a bus tour across the state discussing, I think it was in response to the shooting at the school in Nashville, and it was before Governor Lee's special session ended with red flag laws being passed or not being passed, whatever happened. But I remember being there for that. Okay, they weren't passed. Okay, I remember being there for that town hall discussion out on the streets in downtown Jackson, and the Democrats are trying to speak, and we've got Republican people who are opposing them and just shouting so that people can't even hear what the Democrat elected officials are saying. And then finally, one of them comes over and actually has a conversation with one of the Republican people. And I remember writing about it in the story. I hated all of the extracurricular going on around it, but it was good that I had my phone up in between them listening to this conversation, because they were both making their case and making sense and trying to find some common ground. I don't know if they were trying to find some common ground, because they never did find any common ground. And at the end of the day, they just agreed to disagree. But at least at the end, it wasn't, well, you're an idiot, you hate America because you feel that way. It was just, well, I think you're wrong, and I'm going to continue to believe my way because I feel like my way is right. And that is a step in the right direction, or a step away from the wrong direction. But like you said, I wish we could get a little closer to somebody needs to step up and try to figure out a compromise to find a happy medium to figure this out that makes sense for everybody.
It's odd. I was thinking about this Kratom thing in that same light the last few days, and one of the last op-ed columns I wrote, Sheriff Weiser responded to, and I think there was a line in there that I've heard before: guns don't kill people, people kill people. And in my head, I was like, Kratom doesn't kill people. People taking Kratom kills, right? So it's the same idea. Like both of these things are inanimate objects. There has to be an action that activates them. And I don't know why we can't get to that point, right? To where it's like, okay, yes, technically maybe that inanimate object doesn't do that, but access to that inanimate object does a lot of damage to people. So, I think there's a space for it at some point. I don't know when or where, but it's interesting. I do think, did you reach out to Representative Todd, or did he reach out to you, or did you just see this story out there and you're like, this is, because it was sort of confusing. I know Ray Condrey had him on the MCCR channel or social media page sort of explaining it, because appellate court, people automatically think, oh, you're against this, and he just wanted to make sure people knew that he was not against this. He just wanted to actually seal it up a little bit tighter.
Right. Yeah, and I reached out to him. Like I had seen he had made a couple of posts on his, I don't think it was on his personal, I think it was on his state rep page. And then I did see his conversation with Ray. And I said, hey, if you got a minute or two sometime in the next couple of days, I'd love to talk to you about it, or I can just use your comments from the Ray conversation. But he's good about making himself available to talk to me. He was having a busy week at work, but he still made time for me, and I appreciate that.
Last thing, you could probably like 6% on your battery right now. So if this fades to black and we go Sopranos, that's what happened. High school football overview from the first 2 weeks of the season. So we're going to make this quick. I'm just going to ask you, what has been your biggest surprise and what has been your biggest, I don't want to say disappointment, sort of like, yeah, your biggest disappointment, biggest feel good story, biggest kind of like letdown.
Biggest surprise so far, Southside. I thought they'd get obliterated by Milan, and they competed with them pretty well. Came up short, and I thought JCM would beat them, and they not just beat them, they doubled their score, and most of those points were scored in the second half. So yeah, shout out to Coach Narcisse and the Hawks for showing that there is some improvement in year 3 of him leading the program, and good for them. They will get tested this week, tomorrow night against Northside, but I'm looking for that one to be closer than a lot of people think it will be. So I guess the letdown, I'm not going to call it a letdown because it's not like they're getting shellacked. But if you had told me a month ago that JCM was going to be 0-2 at this point, I would say that ain't going to happen. I mean, they're 2 points. I mean, yeah, they lost by 13 points last week, but you know, how different would that game have been had they won the week before and maybe had a little bit more? I don't know if they would have had more confidence or not going in, but I'd like to think they would have. So would that have helped their play in the Southside game? And they'd come out to a better start and end up getting the win. So, yeah, if you want to call that a letdown, then JCM was my letdown, but I'm not calling it that. I'm just saying I'm just surprised that they're 0.
Well, that first half of that Southside game, that game was close. I mean, JCM had all the momentum. I think a turnover or a big play, and then I think Southside came right out in the second half and scored in the very first possession, and that was that. But I think you're right. Like sometimes there can be a letdown after a big win, and then you're playing a weaker opponent the next week. I think that Northside game was so close because I was at that game, should have and could have won that game. Northside had 2 big plays, and that was about it, right? And they
were all really early.
The D1 kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, JC was down 14-0 2 minutes into the game and lost 22-20. So, and had chances to score. I was not surprised with the Southside result, not because I thought Southside was better or because I'd even seen Southside. I just know coming off a game like they had the week before and then going to Southside, a team that they beat by 2 scores last year, it would have been tough, I think, to come in there like, you know, fired up and ready and 100% like focused on that. So that one didn't surprise me as much. I'm not going to call JC my letdown. I will say I am a sort of not biggest surprise. Outside's a good pick for that. USJ being 2-0 and winning pretty handily over whoever they played last week. Kind of a surprise.
Them beating ECS as bad as they did is not a surprise because ECS has been down the last couple of years. Coach Blake Butler is trying to get them back. I know you know Blake pretty well when y'all went through the Fight Club together, but y'all went through the same year, right? Okay.
We did.
But the week before when they beat North Point as bad as they did, that's the one that's like, okay. And both them and JCF, I'm proud of both of them because they're both scoring a lot of points. They're both playing good defense. They're both playing quality opponents, and coming out 2-0. And I don't think it's too early to just kind of float the possibility out there that when they meet in week 11, last week of the season on Friday night, October 31st, Halloween, that's going to be one really good Halloween party for a region championship. And there's a possibility they could both be 9-0 going into that.
Wow. That'd be something.
Yeah.
That'd be
just based on what we've seen the 2 weeks. I mean, it's still too early to seriously discuss that, but I'm just going to be the first to publicly float that out there that is a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to them. I feel like, and I will say, I shouldn't have said USC. Liberty winning their first 2. I know they're sort of like pulling out of like the traditional district play and all that, but hats off to them. That's great. 2 wins for Liberty. That's a program that deserves and needs those 2 wins. So I think that's a pretty good story for the first 2 weeks of the season. So where are you going to be tomorrow night? I'm assuming you'll be at Northside, Southside.
Actually, I'm going to have I got a guy named Brian Cole who helps me cover on Friday nights, and he has covered nothing but private schools so far. So I'm going to let him go get Northside, Southside, and I'm going to go to TCA.
Okay. Where's that at? Is that at TCA or is it USJ?
TCA.
Well, all right, buddy. I enjoyed it. I'm so glad that we got to end this talking about high school football, you know, as a bookend to the way that we started this episode, you know, end on a light note, end on a positive note. We may be back in a couple nights to really dive deep into the piece that you did today. Again, I've said it, this will be the fourth time. If you don't have a subscription, get the subscription. It's worth it for a lot of reasons, but especially for the timeline piece that you did immediately after the preliminary hearing today. Good job.
I appreciate that. Well, also thanks to
welcome.
Danny Goodman for laying out everything so that I could write about it.
Yep. All right, man. Let you get in and get your phone on the charger before it completely dies out.
All right. Well, I will definitely be talking to you tomorrow. Take care of that other thing I was asking about today. So appreciate the help on that.
Email it to me.
Yes, sir.
Got you, buddy. All right, man.
See you.
Have a good night. See you.